Hi, welcome to MM3205, Engineering for Manufacturing Operations. My name is Steve Shively. I'm the adjunct instructor. I didn't know when I first started teaching this class, I didn't know what adjunct meant. So I looked it up, and apparently it is something that is not essential. I'm the not quite so essential instructor. I will give you a brief introduction of myself. I tend to think of myself in kind of three buckets: stuff I've learned, stuff I've delivered, and kind of my living life. So, starting with life, I'm the tall, skinny kid there in the middle. That's me and my two brothers, growing up in Southern Oregon. I went to the University of Oregon. I got a bachelor's in political science, kind of an accidental degree. Turns out nobody hires people with degrees in political science, so that turned out to be a problem. I snuck my way into Intel in the mid-90s. This is when Intel was growing like crazy. We hired 1,000 people a month for 2 straight years. Think about that, 1,000 people a month for 2 straight years. We hired 24,000 people in 2 years. And I was one of those 24,000, kind of snuck in the back door because they don't hire political science graduates. I shouldn't laugh about that so much. The way I snuck in the back door is I interviewed for a job. I didn't get the job. It was with 8 interviewers in 4 hours, so 30 minutes each, just kind of machine gun fashion. And I followed up. I thought 4 of the interviews went really well, and 4 of the interviews did not go really well. So I wasn't surprised I didn't get the job. But with the 4 that went really well, I followed up and sent them some kind of badgering emails. Hey, I'm ready to do anything. I'd be happy to help in any way I can. And one of them passed my resume on to somebody else who called and said, hey, I don't have a full-time job, but if you know Microsoft Excel, we need somebody to come in for like a week and just, do some spreadsheet stuff. Oh, yeah, of course, I know Microsoft Excel. Okay, I'll see you on Monday. So I hang up the phone and I run to the library and I get a book on Microsoft Excel. Because at that point, all I'd ever used was Lotus 1-2-3, which was kind of an IBM equivalent to Microsoft Excel. And I showed up. And after a week, they said, why don't you come back another week? And after another week, they said, here's a 3-month defined term contract. And after another couple weeks of that, they said, okay, fine, you're a full-time employee. So I kind of snuck my way in, but I had to prove myself to get the full-time job. Ironically, the job I ended up getting at Intel was the same job I applied for and didn't get in the interview process. And it was dealing with all of the components that go onto motherboards, the penny parts, if you will, the capacitors, resistors, inductors, ferrites, crystals, oscillators, transistors. And it was, somewhere about $80 million worth of those. And I was on a small team responsible for procuring all those. So here's an old motherboard that went into a desktop system, and a lot of the components I was responsible for on that. And then I was responsible also for power supplies after some period of time. I moved to a new site Intel was opening in Washington State, and I was responsible for power supplies. And at that time, I became kind of the functional expert. And I thought at that time being a functional expert was really all that mattered. You might hear it as subject matter expert, you might hear a functional expert, but I thought being the functional expert was the most and only thing that mattered. And as you can tell, it's really only a piece of the puzzle, which I hadn't learned at that time. I then started engineering school at night. I call this my midnight degree because I did most of the work after midnight. And this is basically in response to the fact that I realized that everybody at Intel seemed to have an engineering degree and I did not. So I went one course at a time. This was a remote program. By remote, I mean in the 90s, it was VHS. So, video cassette record. The professor would make a videotape of himself teaching the class, and then they would make a bunch of copies of it and FedEx it out to the students. So the students in class would watch on a TV monitor, and then the students remote, like myself, would get the VHS tape the next day. So after 4.5 years of doing that, I got a master's in electrical engineering, focused on semiconductor device physics, from Columbia University. And then I worked on Intel's first 64-bit processor server, the Itanium server. I was a program manager for that. And I started to discover that being a subject matter expert is all well and good, but even better is if you can develop processes that allow others to be subject matter experts. So if you could create processes, tools, and systems that people can follow, best practices, if you will, that was far more productive than just being a subject matter expert yourself. I then worked on Intel's first mobile processor, the Centrino. And I was an engineering manager for a team of engineers responsible for many of the components that go into the Centrino. And at that time, I learned, being a subject matter expert and creating best practices, those are both well and good, but you can get far more done as a team than you possibly could do as an individual. Obviously, you see there's lots of learning going on. I've been working, nearly 25 years, and I've learned a lot along the way. I'm going to fill out this pie here with a fourth piece, but some years from now, maybe I'll have a fifth or a sixth piece. Right? I'm still learning. When I was in that function, we also started developing patents for electronic components, and I now have my name as a co-inventor for 10 patents at Intel. And then Intel made me an offer I couldn't refuse. They asked 2 or 3 or 4 students employees a year to go to MIT and study engineering and business in a 24-month dual master's program. And so I went to MIT and I got a master's in business, an MBA, and a master's in material science focused on semiconductor device manufacturing. And then you might notice my far right-hand column here is kind of empty. I had spent most of those years focused on school and work and school, and not a whole lot of living. This is a picture of the Boston skyline from the MIT campus. And when I got to Boston, I started to live a little bit more. And that probably in no small measure because I met my wife. This is my wife, Sarah. She is also a student in that, or was a student in that program, and is a graduate from MIT, and much smarter than I am. She's a chemical engineer. So in the pyramid of engineering, she is certainly higher than I in electrical engineering. She also that's her helping me put on a helmet because she taught me how to skate, and I was on a hockey team at MIT. She also taught me how to ski and to play golf, and I married into her family, which is hunting and fishing family, and so I've learned how to do those things as well. While I was at MIT, Intel and Dell swap an employee, and so I was the token Intel person that went to Dell for about 6.5 months and worked on a $600 million cost of quality project, and wrote my thesis based on that. And then after Dell, went back to Intel, and you notice the logo's changed in all those years. In total, I was at Intel 12 years. And then I realized that having teams is great, but you really can't be productive as a team unless you collaborate with other teams. And it's that partnership with other teams across an organization that get the most leverage. Like I said, I've now got 4 pieces to this puzzle. And give me some more time. Maybe I'll find a 5th or a 6th piece to the puzzle. I think I'm still learning. I think everyone is still learning. This is my oldest child. When she was born in 2006, my wife in the delivery room, she said, "Hey, you remember we were going to move to Minnesota someday? Well, it's today." So my wife and I relocated to Minnesota. I got a job at Target in software development for Target.com, running all of the metadata behind the website. The item master attribute system. It was also called Prism. So I did that for a few years at Target. And then there's my 3 kids there at the bottom. The oldest is Laura. She's now 12, and then Larson is 8, and then Linnea is 5. And I've learned, like I said, I learned how to fish and hunt, and really enjoy Minnesota. Look at that. The whole right-hand column is now getting full. And then I took a job in 2009 at Boston Scientific as a director of supplier engineering. I did that for about 6 years. And then I was getting, frankly, a little bored of doing the same thing after 6 years, as you might imagine. And I told my boss's boss, "Hey, I'm just looking to solve the biggest problems in the company." And he's like, "Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting." And a month later, he calls me and says, "Steve, I think I found the biggest problem in the company." And at that moment, it dawned on me, oh, gosh, I can't say no. Whatever else comes out of his mouth, whatever next comes out of his mouth, I have to say yes, because what are you supposed to say? How about the second biggest problem in the company? Well, so it turns out at that time, the biggest problem in the company was one of our acquisitions. And it was a heart mapping piece of capital equipment, and they couldn't really get the factory to produce units that worked. And so they asked me to go run that factory. It was a really small factory in Massachusetts. So I literally commuted Sunday through Friday to Massachusetts from Minnesota. And we got the factory turned around. We were making barely 1 unit a month. And we got to the point where we were making more than 1 unit a day, which was meeting the market demand. So I did that for a few years. And then after that, I ran an operations strategy group, which was responsible for doing the diligence for acquisitions before we acquired a company. And Boston Scientific has been acquiring a lot of companies lately. We also were responsible for site selection, which was which manufacturing site should build which products. And also network optimization. So, where should we build our next factories? Where should we close old factories? Where should we build new distribution sterilization centers? Where should we create new shipping lanes and the like? And then also the 10-year strategy for operations. What should we be investing in now for 10 years hence? And then most recently, I've taken on the responsibility of running a factory in Costa Rica. So I now live in Costa Rica, and my family is with me in Costa Rica, and we are enjoying the Costa Rican experience. And I work every day in one of our 2 large manufacturing facilities as the vice president of operations for Heridia production. And of course, I'm also an adjunct instructor here at the University of Minnesota. So I'll pause right there, and then we'll come right back for the course syllabus.